Welcome to Sober Talk. I'm Dennis and I have lived experience of alcohol. If you or anyone you know is struggling with alcohol, please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 222222 or check out their website on aa.org.au. I'll just run through the preamble of Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other. They must solve their common problems and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses or opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety.
Good evening all, my name's Paul and I'm an alcoholic. My last drink was on the 26th of May 1983, and I say that for my benefit, not yours. And I say that because I remember just after I came into the fellowship, I heard someone say that they've been sober for 15 years, and I thought, gee, there's something wrong with you. How come you haven't got it yet? And today I understand why that bloke was still around. It's why I'm around 38 years later, because I need this fellowship. I'll start at the beginning. I'm from South Australia, and my first drink was at 5 years of age. And I won't describe that drink. I used to until I remember how much damage that could do for someone who's really hanging out for a drink. But let me just say it made me feel 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and I chased that feeling for a number of years. I started sailing at the Larks Bay Sailing Club, and whilst drinking was part of the culture, it wasn't big, but I had a few beers down there, and in my early teens, or around about 14, 15, I was going to parties and drinking on a regular basis. I then joined the army at 17, and I was earning a man's wage, and I thought I had a right to drink, and you know, I did as far as the army was concerned. You know, if I could soldier, I could go to the boozer and I could drink, and I did, and I would go to civilian pubs, even though at that stage I was underage in all states. And that was rather funny. I went through basic training, then my core training at Puckapunyal after I left Wagga, and did a bit of serious drinking then. But when I was first posted in Melbourne, I went to a pub on my 18th birthday, and a barmaid that had been serving me for 6 months said to me, "Oh, have you got a license or something on you? I need proof of age." And I thought, how rude. How rude. You didn't bother asking me age when I was underage, but now I'm 18. This is the day I turned 18. I thought, well, I won't be back here. I never did. I never went back to that pub. And it's funny how things like that used to offend me. But that was life, and I took to drinking as people say, fish take to water. You know, I absolutely loved it, and I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of enjoyment. It took me to a lot of places that I wouldn't have gone otherwise, and some of those places were terrific, and some weren't so good. But at 18 and a half, 19, I met a woman who was divorced. She was 10 years older than I was, and had a daughter 10 years younger than I was, and I fell in love, and you know, I decided it was a good idea to get married. In hindsight, that wasn't a great decision. It wasn't a great decision. But I should describe why I decided to get married. My brother-in-law was closer to Kapooka in New South Wales at the time, and we'd just bought a second-hand 66 Cortina between us, my partner and I, decided it'd be a good idea to go up and visit my brother-in-law under the pretext of visiting my sister one weekend. So, I took my partner and her daughter in the car and we drove to Wagga. And on the Saturday night I went to a party, and I can't remember what the party was for, but it was a party my brother-in-law and sister were at. And I drank heaps, and the next day he said, we're going around to finish the keg, and I thought, well, that's a good idea. I said, I'll catch up with you, and I said, I'm partner, it won't be long, because we're going to start back early afternoon, and I'll just go around and have a couple of beers, and I went back to this keg, and I said to him, I just need to go in town and get some smokes, and of course I was drunk. I didn't know I was drunk, but I was drunk. And I was coming into Wagga and took a corner a little bit fast in the 66 Cortina. And next thing I know, I'm sliding along the roof. And I'm still turning the wheel thinking, gee, this isn't going to come round. And I pulled up and undid the lap seat belt and fell on my head and got out of the car. And ambulances were called and the police and the ambulance checked me over and went, yeah, no, you're all right. And I'm sitting in the back of this police car, and this policeman said to me, oh, so you're in the army? I said, yep. What gave me away? The haircut? He went, yeah. And then he said, so you're out of Kapurk? And I said, no, I'm actually posted in Melbourne. He said, oh, okay. He said, can I have a look at your leave pass? Because back in those days, you needed a leave pass to go interstate when you're in the army. And I said, yeah, look, officer, I'd like to show you that, but I haven't got one. And he said, well, I'm not really concerned with that. That's an army matter. He said, can I have a look at your driver's licence? And I said to him, yeah, look, I'd like to show you that too, but I don't have one. And he said to me, that could be a problem. What are you doing in Wagga? And I said, I come up to visit my brother-in-law. And he said, who might that be? And I said, oh, Des McIntyre. And he said, Desi? He said, I play football with Desi. He's a top bloke. I said, yeah, he is. He said, look. He said, that makes you Barbara's brother. And I said, yep. And he said, well, you know what? I know Barbara and you've got enough problems. Get the car towed out of here and I haven't seen you. So I did that. And I'm sitting in the front of the tow truck and it's pulling into, backing into my sister's front yard. And my sister's standing in the front yard and she's crying. And I'm thinking, why are you crying? It's not your car. And then my partner came out and she stood on the veranda. She looked at the car, she looked at me, she burst into tears and ran inside. And I thought to myself, I've got to put this right. I'm really upset her and I'm sorry I did that. So I did what any good little alcoholic would do. I went inside to apologise and ended up proposing. Didn't ask me why I did that. Well, no, I know why I did that. Today I know why I did that. I did that to make her feel good. To take away what I'd just done and basically get me out of the spot I was in. Anyway, long story short, and I'm not known for that. My brother-in-law had to drive us back to Melbourne, and so he did that, and he had to turn around and drive back to Wagga and get up and go to work at 6 o'clock the next day. And whilst I appreciated that, I don't think until I was sober I really appreciated what he did for me for that day. So anyway, that's why I got married the first time. And was it a good idea? No, it wasn't. We had a son in that marriage, and to give you an indication of where I was travelling, I had the best of both worlds. I had a wife, come mother figure who looked after me, and who was 10 years older than I was, and I had a stepdaughter who was more in my age group, who was 10 years younger than me, and we'd stand in the kitchen washing the dishes of a night, trying not upset the parent figure in the house, and thought that was normal. I thought that was normal. But it wasn't, of course. You know, I had stunted growth. I just lived in a teenage world when really I should have been living in the adult world. And I didn't adult very well. You know, I son responsibility, and at the time I wouldn't have told you that. You know, at the time I was a corporal and I had responsibilities in the army, and I did my job and I did it well. But living life was not good for me, and I decided that we needed a new start. So I sat down with my wife and said, you know, I think I need to get out of Melbourne. You know, that's why I'm drinking so much. How about a posting in Albury? She said, fine. So I applied for a compassionate posting to Albury to save the marriage, and that came through. I got posted to the Raston detachment at Bonegilla, and my wife said, I'm not going. You know, she had a job. She'd had a flat that she'd lived in for years, and really she had 2 kids to bring up, and she'd had enough, and she went, I'm not going. And that's when the marriage started to break down. I spent nearly 3 years travelling between Bonegilla and Melbourne on the weekends, trying to keep the marriage going, trying to make it work, and of course it didn't. And in the end, it just fell apart, and we went our own ways. And then I was posted to Puckapunyal, where I met my second wife, and she was in the army, and I was posted to 2nd Recruit Training Battalion, and she was there having just finished her core training, and you know, I've never liked being alone. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And that relationship went on for a few years, and some horrible things in that relationship that I didn't mean to do. You know, there was one occasion where I was supposed to meet her in Melbourne on a Friday afternoon, and she was going to catch the train in from Frankston, and anyone who knows Melbourne knows the distance, and I was going to drive down from Park and figure out we were going to have a weekend together. And I got drunk on the Thursday night, on the pay night. I just didn't make it to Melbourne on the Friday afternoon, and drove down on the Saturday. And I couldn't have driven to Melbourne that day because I was well over the limit, and you know, so that was at least a good decision not going down, but it was just a horrible thing to do. And you know, as I said, we had a relationship for a few years, and my degree absolutely came through, and I did what I did. I proposed, and we got married, and we had our first daughter, and then we had our second daughter, and life wasn't getting much better for me because I was still drinking, you know. Little did I know until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous that I was powerless over alcohol. But once I had that first drink, I was gone for all money, and all responsibility went out the door. And we got to Townsville, and we discussed having our third child, and decreed we were going to do that. And my wife got pregnant, and I'd come to AA, and that sounds nice. Like I came to AA, I made a decision. Well, I didn't make a decision. I rang AA. I'd missed my birthday. I'd got drunk instead of going home for my birthday tea. Felt real guilty about it, and rang AA. And this bloke on the other end of the line spoke to me for 3 hours. And at the end of that time, he said, you know, if you want to drink, that's your business. If you want to stop, that's ours. And I thought, how rude. He's just wasted 3 hours of my time, and I hung up on him. But a short time later, and within a month, I'd say, I'd walked into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous because my best man, who was that brother-in-law I was telling you about, one of his brothers, had come to AA at the magistrate's leisure. The magistrate had said to him, 3 months in AA or 3 months in jail. He went, oh, tough call, I'll take AA. But I was in Sydney at that time, and I'd seen the change in him, so I knew that it worked. And then, of course, after his so-called sentencing to AA was over, he went back to drinking, and he eventually died. And it wasn't alcohol-related, it was something else. But I knew it worked. So I knew where I had to come, and I knew what I had to do. And well, no, that's not true. I didn't know I had to. I didn't know I had to give up drinking. I had a faint suspicion that's what they might ask me to do if I went to an AA meeting, but I didn't really know. And I walked through the doors, and that first night I heard three things. I heard that it was a disease and I was a sick person, not a bad person. I heard that if I didn't pick up the first drink, I couldn't get drunk. And the third thing I heard was that I could leave that room that night and need never drink again. And for a bit over 38 years, that's worked for me. And no one's more surprised at that than me. You know, I actually love this fellowship. And if you're out there and you've got a drinking problem and you listen to this because you think you might have a drinking problem, give it a go. Give it a go. It's not going to do you any harm. If you're alcoholic, it may save you your life. And if you're not, it might just tone down your drinking a bit, you know. But as I've heard around these rooms, don't leave before the miracle happens. And I'm not a religious person. You know, and for quite a few years in the fellowship, I used to say, you know, I'm Paul, I'm an alcoholic and a recovering Catholic, because I thought my Catholicism was my problem. But it wasn't. Guess what? It was alcoholism. And blow me down, I didn't know that. You know, I thought I was just a good bloke having a bad trot. But I found out that wasn't true. I learned those three things that first night. And I'd like to be able to sit here and say to you, you know, my life's been a breeze ever since. It hasn't. You know, my life has been a life. You know, there's been ups, there's been downs. There's been great things, there's been horrible things. You know, I lost my daughter a few years back. You know, she got really sick, and we thought she was going to die, and she didn't. And I'm so grateful for that. You know, and I'm so grateful that night while we're in the hospital, having been told that she probably wasn't going to pull through the night, I could walk down the corridors of Flinders Medical Centre with tears pouring down my cheek, just trying to get my head around it. And you know, recovery has given me the ability to cry. And you know, I was born and bred in Port Adelaide, and anyone knows what the area used to be like. You know, you certainly didn't cry. You certainly didn't get up and share your problems with anyone outside your house. Hell, you didn't even talk to anybody inside the house about them. So, you know, I learned also, that was also in my head, and it was in my upbringing, you know, it was put into my head, you know, men didn't cry, and you handled your own problems, and you know, of course you drank because you worked hard, and you're allowed to play hard, you know, and I know in that upbringing was I educated that was going to be at no cost. No one ever said to me, you can do what you like, drink as much as you like, do what you like, and there'll be no cost to pay, because of course there's a price to pay, you know, and that price for me was my first marriage, but then again, if I had my first, I wouldn't have had my second. And, you know, we've got 3 lovely kids, and you know, I'm not a religious person, but, you know, I feel blessed. I really don't like that word, but that's what I feel. I feel like it's something that's been given to me, as have my 4 grandchildren. You know, I love my grandchildren to bits, you know, and they're better than your own kids. If you haven't got grandkids, you know, you've got something to look forward to. You can have all the fun, fill them full of sugar and send them home, you know. But I love seeing my grandkids, and it's only through this fellowship that I have the opportunity to do that. It's only through this fellowship and the fact that I'm sober that I can ride motorbikes. You know, 8 years ago I started riding motorbikes. Who would have thought? You know, I crashed a Honda 50 into a fence at a barbecue when I was drunk when I was in the army, and was never going to ride. And for 8 years I've been riding bikes, and we actually went out and did a couple hundred kilometres with the club yesterday on a memorial ride, and that was a great experience. And I rode the big bike a lot better than I have in a long time, and it was just a great day. And the sun was shining, and you know, I'm riding along with my wife on the back and looking at nature and just loving it. And you know, that's part of my serenity for excuse me, part of my serenity for me. And another one of these gifts that I talk about. And, you know, all those old people who said that, you know, they didn't ask me to do much when I came in. They just asked me to change everything about myself. And that's a quote from Dollar Des. And some people in the fellowship would know who that is, you know. And I did have to change everything about myself. And I had to have a good look at me. Something that I always thought I was doing, but I never was. You know, I never had an honest look at me until I got to this gig. And I've done that now. And you know, today I know what triggers me. Today I still have every one of my defects of character. They're all in the background waiting to come forward, and I need to keep them in check on a daily basis, and I try and do that to the best of my ability. I have a God of my own understanding. You know, I was brought up a Catholic, and in my drunken stupidity, I convinced my wife our kids should be Catholic, and then one day she said to me, it's time. I said, it's time for what? She said, it's time to take the kids to church. And I was working shift work, and I said, I can't do that. I get one weekend off a month. And she did it for a number of years, and when I was off, I would go to church with them, and the kids did their sacrament. But, you know, I don't practice my Catholic religion, but you know, I do have a spiritual foundation. I have a God of my understanding who I pray to and who I hand stuff over to. I'm a changed person. I do things for people today not expecting something in return. You know, in the good old days, if I was doing something for you, it was because eventually you'd be able to do something for me. But it's not like that today. I've done a little bit of service work, you know. I've been a group secretary. I'm still currently a co-secretary because our secretary works shift work. I've been a general service representative of the district, which I still am today. I've been the area delegate. I reached the all-time low of service work. I served 4 years on the board of Alcoholics Anonymous Australia, and I say it's the bottom of the service heap. And if anyone in the fellowship will understand that we have it's an inverted triangle, and you know, it all starts with the member, and it's the members of the board that actually do all the work, and that's different to any other business. And it was an honour, and I would say a pleasure, but it was hard yakka for 4 years, let me tell you. But I loved it. It gave me the opportunity to give back. And people used to say, you know, you got to give it away to keep it. You do. You know, I do a bit of 12-step work, not a lot, but I do a bit. And I sponsor people. And then why do I do that? Because people did it for me. If it wasn't for my sponsors, I wouldn't be here. And Grace, if you ever hear this, know that I love you. You know, Grace was my second sponsor, and the first sponsor was terrific, and he actually sponsored Grace, and Grace sponsored me, and Grace did me a lot of good. You know, Grace drank as much as I did. She swore more than I did, and she still swears more than I do, and that's saying a bit. But Grace was really, really good for me, and everyone should have a Grace in their life. Everyone should have a closed-mouth friend who can open up and give it to you with both barrels when they need to. Because, you know, Ron and Grace saved my life. And in the old days, you know, I would have said, that's a bit melodramatic because I was quite capable of being a drama queen. Today it's just a fact. So, you know, and when I was on the board, it was in my portfolio to set up our nationwide telephone number. And I'd like to take the credit for that, but I can't because one of the other trustees, a good friend of mine, said, look, I live in Sydney, it'll be easier for me to do it. Would you mind? Would I mind if you did my job for me? No, I wouldn't. You go right ahead. So, you know, if you need a bit of help, that number is 13222222, and I think there's only 6 twos in there, Dental Fergie later, which is 1300 222222 AA. And you know what? That was just chance that we got the AAAA. It's just the way it came out of the draw. But how appropriate is that? You know, I said I love this gig, and I do, and I love everyone in it. I don't like everyone in it. I don't have to like everyone in it. You know, I don't get to be judgmental these days. But you know, if I don't love every outie out there, then I've got no chance. It has so far given me a bit over 38 years of a much better life, and all I want out of life now is to die sober, because I know if I die sober, I've given it the best chance. And that's enough from me. Back to you, Dan.
We have local meetings for the full week in the local area. Monday's Gala meeting at 8 o'clock. Tuesday is Elizabeth East at 8 o'clock. Wednesday is Elizabeth East at 8 o'clock. Thursday is Two Wells at 8 o'clock. And Friday is Salisbury at 8 o'clock. There's a meeting at Deveron Park at 12 o'clock. And on Sunday there's a meeting in Salisbury at 7 o'clock. And many other meetings in the area. For details of your local meetings, please phone 1300 222222. And once again, if anyone you know is struggling with alcohol issues, please call Alcoholics Anonymous on 1300 222222. The website is aaSouthAustralia.org.au.